Good morning. So we are ready to get started with our combination yin and yang class. And we'll do roughly the first half on the yin side, a little more gentle, or actually just holding the poses. It can be challenging to hold the poses. So you might want a little bit of support. So I'm sitting on a bolster. You might want a bolster if you have one. If not, maybe a rolled up blanket or a couch cushion or a pillow from your bed, maybe a couple of blocks or some books, any type of support that you might want. And as we go through the yin postures this morning, we're going to kind of approach it with a Goldilocks type of theory where we want to have that just right. So not too much sensation and not too little. So we want to know that we're doing something, but not push it to the point where it feels overly uncomfortable. And again, I wanted to thank you for joining me this morning. We're going to start in the seated meditation. So any comfortable seat, you might want to choose to sit up on, again, some type of support so that our hips are higher than our knees, and allowing our eyes to just soften or close, maybe letting our gaze come down towards the floor. And as we find some length in the spine, lengthening from the tailbone to the crown of the head, just becoming very aware of the breath. Noticing how your breath is feeling this morning, noticing the quality and the texture of your breath. So is your breath getting stuck anywhere, or does it flow nice and easily? Noticing where the breath is traveling. And as you watch the breath, maybe allowing it to become a little longer and deeper. So we'll come to a 3-part breath. Inhaling, letting the belly expand. And then the ribs, and then finally the chest. And then exhaling, reversing that order. So exhaling, emptying out the chest, and then the ribs, and all the way down to the belly. So we'll repeat that flow, that 3-part breath, inhaling, expanding, and exhaling, letting go. Doing that a few times at your own pace. Every time we exhale, emptying completely, letting go of expectations and judgments, letting go of competition with ourselves or anybody else, but especially that competition we have with ourselves where we put those shoulds or just those expectations on ourselves to be a certain way, to be different. So as we move through the practice this morning, allowing whatever is, honoring the body, honoring the way that we feel this morning. And we can begin to bring awareness now to how the body's feeling. Noticing your body resting on the earth, feeling the ground underneath our feet and our legs. And if we're sitting up on support, noticing that as well. Allowing the body to be held, to be supported. Noticing anywhere that there might be some tension or tightness in the body. And inviting the breath to go to those places. Imagining that we can dissolve away any tension or tightness that we might be holding on to. And as we are aware of the breath and the body, we might notice our mind starting to drift and wander. And anytime that that happens, especially as we move through the yin part of our practice where we hold our poses longer, our mind might try to take us out of the poses. So anytime we have that awareness, just gently inviting the mind back to the breath and back to this present moment without beating ourselves up or creating a story. And even if we have to do that every few moments, just every time it happens, acknowledging the thoughts, we can just watch those thoughts almost as if they were white, fluffy clouds across a blue sky. So we can watch those clouds flowing by, those thoughts moving, and knowing we can come back to them at a later time. We'll take just one or two more breaths right here. And slowly allowing our gaze to lift or our eyes to flutter open. And we're going to come into a long-legged butterfly. So taking the feet far away from the body, but bringing the soles of the feet together. You might want to have blocks underneath your knees, or you could have a cushion under your feet like I do. I have a blanket under my feet. And then as we inhale, lengthening the spine, we'll exhale, just allowing the body to drape forward. So in this forward long-legged butterfly, it's okay to have some rounding in the spine, but finding that comfortable edge here. Some of us might want to place a pillow or a bolster between our legs and our belly, and that's fine too. So adding any props that can allow you to be comfortable here as we hold this pose. Finding that place where we feel that first comfortable edge, so where we know something is happening, but we're not trying to force anything. We're not going past that first comfortable edge. Relaxing all the other muscles in the body. So being aware of the shoulders, making sure they're drawing down away from the ears, relaxing the muscles of the face and the jaw. Allowing the back of the neck to be long. So if your head feels uncomfortable or your neck feels uncomfortable here, maybe placing elbows on the legs and using the fists to prop the forehead, or you could use a couple of blocks to prop the forehead. So we can be creative here. So as we first get into the pose, taking a few moments till we find that place where we feel comfortably supported. And when it comes to our yin practice, our yin poses, there are a couple elements at play, and one of them is time in the pose. So the time to do that work for our connective tissues, for the ligaments and the fascia, the joints, but then honoring the body as well. So as we come to that edge and as we hold our poses, we might notice that our edge goes a little deeper, and maybe we can go a little deeper in the pose. Or perhaps our edge recedes a little bit and we might need to lift out of a pose a little bit or exit it completely. So as we hold our postures and as we come into them, being very aware of our bodies today and knowing that we never need permission to exit a pose or to maybe alter it to fit our bodies. And then just allowing the breath to go wherever you need it in this moment. Periodically checking in with the shoulders, making sure we're not letting them start to hunch or create tension. And just one or two more breaths right here. And then to exit our yin postures, we'll always come out of them very slowly. So lifting up and out of this, you might choose to set knee props aside, and we'll add a little bit of counter movement. So perhaps bending the knees and adding some windshield wipers. Just a little bit of slow movement, or you could have the legs extended in front of the body, maybe rolling out the legs or the ankles. And from here, we're going to come into now a half butterfly. So we'll bend the right knee, bringing the foot in towards the left thigh. And again, you might choose to be sitting up on a towel, a blanket, or a bolster. And from here, we're just going to turn the body towards that extended leg, making sure that that foot is nice and relaxed so we don't need to flex the foot like we would in other postures. We might even choose to prop the knee if we need a little extra bend in the knee. Maybe placing a bolster, or have that option of bringing the elbow to the thigh once again. So experimenting to see what fits your body so that you can feel the sensation in this half butterfly. And for some of us, we might be feeling it more in the bent leg into maybe the hip or the low back. Some of us might be feeling it more into the extended leg, into the back of the thigh, into the hamstring muscle. So just noticing what you're aware of in this posture. Always being that observer. Relaxing the shoulders, letting them soften down the back. And again, making any adjustments to your body can be at ease here, finding that just right place. Maybe wiggling the toes, reminding ourselves to not create any tension in the feet. Sometimes the feet like to help out a little bit as well. But for our yin postures, we're just trying to get into the connective tissue. So our yang postures will get more into the muscles and they'll be more dynamic. So while we're holding these long poses, we're getting into those yin tissues. Especially the fascia. It can take a while to get into those connective tissues. So that's why we hold the poses longer. Observing your breath as you hold the pose. Making sure we're not holding the breath or letting it get labored in any way. And if we are, then we can always back out. We're just about ready to exit this pose. We'll take one more breath here. And slowly, once again, we'll bring our hands closer to the body, lifting the head and the chest. Finding your version of counter movement here. Again, that might be windshield wipers, or maybe extending the legs forward, giving them a little shake or some circles. Maybe a little back bend. And then we'll come into that half butterfly on the other side. So extending the right leg, bending the left knee, adjusting the body however you might want to. So again, you might choose to prop the forehead on that fist, keeping the back of the neck relaxed, allowing the body to drape towards that leg. So as we get into this pose on the other side, we might be aware already of some differences between the two sides of the body. That's pretty normal. So if we can go deeper on this side, you might choose that, or if you need to back out of it a little bit. So making those observations without creating any type of stories or judgments, just being with whatever is, allowing. Remembering it's okay in these yin poses to have a little bit of rounding in the spine. We're not moving dynamically through the poses. So it's just a way of finding that softness in the pose. So getting deep into that fascia. And the fascia in the body is really kind of interesting. It's almost like if you peeled an orange, that's a good way to think of the fascia. So when we first peel an orange, there's that white outer lining on the orange. So that's one layer of the fascia. And then if you start to peel the individual pieces or the segments of the orange, that's the way more of the way the fascia is within the muscles. And then when you go deeper into the individual slice of the orange, there are still further little pieces, little segments. And that's kind of the way the fascia is. It goes all throughout all of our muscles in the body, in between the muscles, within the muscles. And so it can get very tight. And so this is one way that we can get into that fascia and also to help hydrate it. So as we've held some time in this pose, you might notice maybe a different part of the body starting to speak to you. Relaxing the back of the neck and the shoulders, noticing if they're starting to tighten up a little bit. Take just a couple more breaths right here in this pose. And then to exit this pose, we'll walk the hands in, slowly lifting the torso and the head. And we'll make our way onto hands and knees. So maybe just a couple rounds of cat and cow before moving on. So when we hold our yin postures, a lot of times we can maybe feel like we're really old in between when we come out of those poses, because they've really created the good kind of stress into those connective tissues. So now getting ready to come into our low flying dragon, and we might want our blocks nearby for this one. We'll step the right foot forward, placing the knee over the ankle. Letting our gaze come down towards the floor. Relaxing the shoulders. And again, the back of the neck is long, so just allowing the gaze to come down towards the floor, not needing to look forward, just listening to the sound of my voice. The rear toes can be resting on the mat. They could be curled under if that feels better, but you might feel a little more relaxed with the toes resting flat on the ground. We'll first just check in and notice, maybe feeling sensation in the front of the rear leg or into the inner thigh or anywhere along the thigh on that front leg. Just letting the belly rest on the leg. And if this is enough sensation, you can stay right here. Or if you'd like, taking the right hand, and maybe if you have a block, also inside of the right foot. The right foot can start to walk towards the outer edge of the mat, maybe coming to a little bit of an angle, maybe as if it were going to 2 o'clock on a clock face. So now we're coming into a wide flying dragon, getting more into the pelvis and the hips. And from here we have a few options. So again, you could return to where we just were in that low flying dragon, or you could start to angle that foot, maybe even peeling the foot a little bit away from the ground. So coming onto the pinky toe edge of the foot. Just exploring, seeing what feels right for your body. We can stay up on our hands or maybe lowering down to the forearms. It's funny what feels good to you as we stay here for just a little bit longer, getting into those hips. Creating some openness into the pelvis. And then one more breath. And to come out of it, we'll reverse where we are, coming back. So maybe lifting up, letting that foot lower if it was lifted, walking the foot back across. And then we'll bring the right knee back to meet the left, just observing differences between the two sides of the body right there. And then any counter movement your body might need here. So that could be a little bit more of an exploration of cat and cow, or perhaps some circles for the hips. And then we'll get ready to find that same pose on the other side. So this time we'll step the left foot forward, stacking the knee and the ankle. Option to place those hands on the blocks once again, and they can be at any height, remembering the blocks have 3 heights, so they could be at the bottom height, middle, or all the way at the tallest height, the 3rd height. As we start to settle into our low flying dragon. So having done this on one side already, you might be feeling some of the effects from the other side. Or you might just naturally be tighter on one side than the other. That's pretty natural. Again, allowing our gaze to just come down to the floor so that the back of the neck can be long. Relaxing shoulders away from the ears if they're starting to creep in that direction. Maybe being aware of a difference from the first side and this side. And staying here, or if you'd like a little more sensation, bringing that left hand and the block inside the left foot, walking that left foot over to the side if that feels good. And then remembering our other options, maybe coming on to the pinky toe edge of the foot. And perhaps lowering down onto the forearms. Some of us, if we're really flexible, might choose to come all the way down to the floor with our forearms. So finding your comfortable edge, that place where you know something's happening, but you're not pushing into a place of pain. And always being aware of the breath. So if the breath starts to get labored or we find ourselves holding it, knowing maybe we're pushing a little too far and we can back out a little bit. We're just here for a few more breaths, so getting into that hip, creating that openness in the pelvis. And then starting to make our way out of the pose. So if we were lowered, we'll start to lift the body, walking that foot across. And then coming back to hands and knees, tabletop. Finding any counter movement as we start to notice if we feel maybe a little more balanced between both sides of the body, or maybe we're a little more aware of one side than the other. And we're going to start to make our way down onto our bellies. So I've done a lot of forward-leaning postures so far, and now we're going to counter that with a little bit of a back bend. So we're going to come into a Sphinx pose, and again, choosing the level of intensity that you'd like this morning. So you might start first by stacking the elbows, the forearms, and just letting the forehead rest on the back of the forearms. If that's enough sensation in your lower back, choosing to stay here. If the body wants a little bit more, maybe coming onto the forearms now. So placing elbows directly underneath shoulders, hips are pressing into the mat, and our legs are long. And since we're going to hold this pose for a little while, we might choose to take our block underneath the forehead so that the back of the neck can relax. The low belly is lifting away from the earth, but again, we're trying to relax all the other parts of the body. So relaxing the toes, relaxing the shoulders. And in this pose, we want to feel something happening into the lumbar spine. So you might be aware of sensation there. Finding that good level of stress as we stimulate the cells. But again, if it at any point becomes too intense, maybe lowering down a little bit more. Or finding another position that feels better. Letting the breath flow steadily. Noticing if the mind, again, drifts in any direction, if it starts to wander. And then just inviting the breath back to, or the mind back to the breath, back to the present moment. Not needing to change anything, not needing for anything to be different, just allowing. Finding that sense of santosha or contentment. Taking just one or two more breaths right here in this pose. then to come out of it, we'll just allow the body to slowly lower down. Forehead can rest on the mat, or you can turn your head to one side. We'll take a few moments here to allow the spine to come back into neutral. And placing hands next to the shoulders, we're going to push the body up and then back into a wide-legged child's pose. So knees are as wide as the mat. Forehead can come down to the floor, or you can support it with your hands or a block, allowing the hips to soften towards the earth. Arms can be extended, or if it feels better, you can bring them back towards the feet. So breathing into that length in the spine. So a nice counter pose to our Sphinx. Let's stay here just a couple breaths. We're getting ready to become a little more active in our practice this morning, finding our more yang-like poses, our yang-like movement, but enjoying a few more moments of stillness. Noticing any sensations in the body. Being with the breath. From here, we'll extend the arms forward, crawling the fingertips towards the top of the mat. And we're going to walk both hands off the left edge of the mat, laterally extending the spine as we crawl those right fingertips forward. The right heel or the right hip stays on the heel. Breathing into the spaces between the ribs. And inhaling, we'll walk hands across the mat over to the right side. Inching those left fingertips forward. Inhaling, we'll come back to center. And then coming into our tabletop once again, placing hands directly underneath shoulders, knees are under the hips, and we're going to move through cat and cow a few more times. So really starting to warm up the spine now, inhaling forward, letting the belly drop, and then exhaling, rounding the spine, pushing the floor away from us as we draw the chin in towards the chest. Using the inhale to drop the belly and look forward for cow, and then exhaling into cat. Moving at your own pace here as we start to wake the spine up a little bit more. And after those poses that we've held, you might really be aware of the spine. So being really gentle here, honoring what your body needs, moving quickly or slowly. Just one more round like this. And then we'll sit back into another child's pose for one or two more breaths as we feel that length in the spine. And perhaps choosing to stay here in child's pose, or if you'd like, we can inch those fingertips forward, coming into starfish hands, and we'll tuck our toes under to lift into a downward facing dog, keeping knees bent at first. So we lengthen the spine, lifting hips towards the sky, pressing the hands into the mat as we reach our chest back towards our legs, keeping both knees bent or starting to walk your dog. Maybe swiveling the feet from one side to the other, just finding some movement here in any way that fits your body. And anytime we have movement as an option, we also have stillness. honoring what your body needs in this moment. Then lowering both knees down to the floor, coming back into our table. We're going to move through spinal balance. So we'll inhale, extending the right arm forward, letting the thumb reach up towards the sky, keeping the hips square and level to the floor. And then we'll exhale that right arm down. We'll inhale the left arm up and out, getting long. Exhaling to lower, inhaling to lift and extend. Continuing just like this with the arms, or if you'd like, adding in the opposite leg, toes pointing down towards the floor, moving with your breath. Flowing from one side to the other, or remembering we could be moving with just the arms, or you can move with just the legs. Thinking about keeping the hips pointing down towards the floor and that imaginary glass of water on our low backs. Just one more time to each side. And sitting back into a child's pose, finding that length in the spine once again, elongating through the spine. We're going to move through our half series vinyasa now. So inhaling, we'll shift forward into either tabletop or kneeling plank. If we're in kneeling plank, we'll push that floor away from us, lifting through the belly, and then exhaling back. So starting first with a simple combination of inhaling forward and exhaling back, creating a little more warmth for the body. Staying here with these two poses, or if you'd like, this time we have the option of adding in a push-up, lowering either halfway or all the way down to the floor, and then exhaling back. Keeping that push-up as optional, so we might want to add it in one round and leave it out the next. Hugging arms in towards the body, getting into those tricep muscles, the back of the upper arms. And either staying here on knees, or if you'd like, we can start to transition to toes, adding in a downward facing dog. Really to plank on toes, maybe lowering into that push-up, and then back up. Or you can combine those two, maybe lowering the knees down for your push-up. Then coming back to plank on toes. We'll make this the last round, meeting back in downward facing dog or child's pose. Getting ready to take a walk to the front of our mats. We'll inhale, looking forward, and then exhaling, walking our feet to the top of the mat into forward fold. Staying here to sway like a rag doll, letting fingertips trace the floor, or hands can come to the elbows. Slowing that movement down, we'll keep our knees soft. Crown of the head is reaching towards the floor. Rooting the feet into the earth as we deepen the bend in our knees, inhaling reverse swan dive. Exhaling, hands come to the space of the heart. Feeling that connection between our feet and the earth as we start to flow a little bit with the breath. Inhaling, maybe looking up. Exhaling, hands come to the heart. Inhaling, lifting. And exhaling, lowering. This time we're going to add in our swan dive. Inhaling, gaze comes up. Exhaling, hinging at the hips, deep bend in the knees, forward fold. Inhaling, reverse swan dive. And then exhaling, deep knee bend as we hinge forward, rooting the feet down to rise tall once again. And then exhaling, forward fold. Inhaling to lift. This time we'll exhale, sitting into chair pose, letting the hips come towards the heels. Arms can come forward or to prayer. And then adding in a flowing chair, we'll inhale, lifting, and exhaling, sitting back. So we're starting to create some warmth in the body after all those longer holds that we did to start our practice. As we flow through chair, arms can be anywhere that you'd like them to be. So maybe they're coming forward, or they could be at prayer, maybe to the thighs. Sitting the weight of the body back, rooting into the heels, and then using that push down, pressing the feet into the mat to rise back up. This next time that we come into chair pose, taking the option of either staying here for strength, continuing to flow, or we can lift one or both heels away from the mat, rooting down into the big toes. So we might find the weight of the body transferring to the baby toes or the pinky toe edge of the foot, but rooting down through the big toe, firming those thighs, and then we'll lower the heels and inhale to lift. Bringing hands together at the heart. Going through just 2 rounds of sun salutations. We'll inhale, reaching arms up, exhaling, hinging forward. Crown of the head towards the ground. We'll take a step back with the right foot, lowering the knee down to the ground or keeping it lifted. And then maybe choosing to lift into a crescent lunge. Exhaling, hands come to the floor. We'll step the left foot back to meet the right. And then flowing through any option of vinyasa. So we went through that half series a few moments ago. And you can choose one of those options or any vinyasa that you have in your practice. Coming back into child's pose or down dog. And then we'll step that right foot to the top of the mat. Knee can come to the floor or it can be lifted. And then maybe lifting the arms. Exhaling, hands come to the floor. We'll step left foot to meet the right. Inhaling, reverse swan dive. And exhaling into your chair. One more time on that other side. Inhaling, lifting. Exhaling, hinging forward. Inhaling to look forward. We'll step the left foot back this time, finding your version of lunge. Exhaling, hands come down and stepping right foot back, either choosing to stay still or adding in a vinyasa. So you might rest in child's pose or down dog. And then we'll all meet in one of those two. This time stepping left foot to the top of the mat, giving it a little bit of help if it needs it. Finding an arm option if that's appropriate. And then hands to the floor. We'll step right foot to the top of the mat. Inhaling, reverse swan dive. Exhaling, finding our chair pose. Inhaling, hands come to the sky. Bringing hands to the heart. Finding a sense of center and balance. So we'll bring arms down alongside the body, letting palms face forward. Coming into our mountain pose, broadening and opening across the collarbones. And from here, we're going to make our way into our balance for today. So either choosing tree pose, or we can do a standing balancing figure 4, balancing pigeon pose. So we'll start to make the weight or bring the weight into the right leg, still keeping the hips level. Maybe bring our hands to the hip bone so we can keep track of them. The left foot can come to the calf. It could come to the ankle or maybe to the thigh, but being really careful of avoiding the knee. So we don't want to put pressure on the knee. And we could stay here in this tree pose or crossing the ankle above the knee at the thigh, coming into a standing pigeon pose, standing figure 4. And if it's appropriate, or if you want a little more stretch, maybe starting to sit back like we were sitting in chair pose. Now we're getting a little deeper into that left hip and thigh area, into the IT band. Staying here with a little smile. Knowing if we fall out of our pose or if we exit it before we're ready, we can always revisit it. And as you're ready, we'll start to come out of this pose, finding ourselves steady and stable once again, maybe adding in a little bit of counter movement, circling the hips, or maybe a little twist from side to side before we come to that other side. So again, we'll start in that foundation in our mountain pose, rooting down through both feet. And as we start to shift the weight to the left leg, still keeping the hips level, so being really careful we don't sass that hip out to the side. We'll root down and we'll engage root lock, mula bandha, as we lift up, perhaps finding tree pose, or maybe coming into that figure 4, whichever feels more appropriate for this side of the body. Noticing if we're wobbling at all, knowing that's creating strength. So all wobbling and bobbling is good stuff. Setting our gaze on a point on the floor of the wall that doesn't move. So we root down through the big toe on that standing foot. Really strengthening the glute on that standing leg. We'll stay here just a few more breaths. Relaxing the shoulders. And then slowly lifting up and out. So again, maybe shaking the arms and the legs, or a little bit of counter movement. Thanking our hips and our legs for helping us to balance. Thanking those feet. And we'll come back into one last mountain pose, planting those feet underneath the hips. We'll inhale, arms up to the sky. We'll take the right hand around the left wrist and inhale, lifting, exhaling, coming over to the right side into a crescent side bend. Inhaling to lift. We'll exhale, switching hands. We'll inhale, pushing the sky away, and exhaling over to the left side. Inhaling back up, and then big exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Coming down onto hands and knees. And we'll make our way onto our bottoms. We'll extend our legs forward. And then bending those knees. We'll hold on behind one thigh, using that as a handle to lower down. So first starting with knees bent, feet flat on the mat, allowing the spine to soften towards the earth. And you can stay just like this if this is feeling good, or bring knees in towards the body, knees to chest, maybe adding in a rocking motion or some circles for the knees. You take hands to the knees and start to circle the knees, almost as if we were rowing a boat. So thinking of rowing a canoe, first letting the knees go in one direction, and then in the other. And if that's not feeling good, if it feels better to stay still or to rock, choosing that. And then bringing feet flat on the ground. We're just find that windshield wiper motion once again. So like a flowing twist. And since we were still for quite a while, you have the option here of either continuing to flow, letting the knees go from side to side, or we could come into more of a passive twist, letting both knees drop over to the left side with the right arm out behind us. Arms could be in a T shape, or you could bring that left hand to the right thigh. Turning your gaze towards the right arm or up to the ceiling. So knees could be flowing, or if they're dropped to the left side, knees are going in one direction and the belly and the chest are spiraling in the other direction. And if we're holding that pose, we'll take just one or two more breaths right here in the twist. We'll come back to center, pausing for just a moment, and then letting the knees drop over to the other side. Enjoying that sense of the body starting to slow down. Taking just a couple more breaths right here. And slowly making our way back to center. Bringing knees to chest, staying there, or lifting the feet to the sky to come into a happy baby. Knees are drawing towards the armpits, and hands could be on the backs of the thighs or the calves, or perhaps taking our yogi toe hold around the big toes and adding in a little rocking motion. Only if that feels safe to the spine, if that feels uncomfortable in any way, staying still like a dead bug. And then as we start to make our way out of this pose, finding any last pose or posture that your body needs. That could be a bridge pose. It could be another happy baby or a twist. And then as you're ready, making your way into final relaxation, Shavasana. Either extending the legs long in a traditional version of Shavasana, with feet flopping out towards the side, palms up, or knees could be bent. Connecting the body to the earth. Feeling the ground fully supporting and holding you. Letting go of all ease or effort. Rewarding our bodies for all that we've done and really absorbing and integrating the practice. Slowly beginning to invite some movement back to the body. Maybe tracing the thumbs over the fingertips, and wiggling the toes. And then bending the knees, gently rolling to one side. Using the top hand to help lift to a comfortable seat. Lifting up and out of the tailbone, lengthening that crown of the head to the sky as we bring hands together at the heart. The divine light in me honors the divine light within you. Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. Have a great day.